Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Now, this video is going to be pretty much me just talking and giving you my opinions and thoughts on subjects which I've been asked about in recent weeks. So if you don't like this type of video, please turn the video off now. Go and watch somebody else. Don't watch it. Now, as you all probably know, I'm an iRacing guy through and through. I've always loved iRacing. But in recent weeks, I haven't really touched it. I've done one league race every week for the last few weeks, but you haven't seen much iRacing content on the channel. And that's probably due to one big reason, rFactor2. Now, I'll nip this in the bud as well. I work with Traction, who sit under the umbrella of Motorsport Games, who own rFactor2. So people are going to say, "Oh, Dave, you're being a bit of a shill. Promoting rFactor2. Well, if that was the case, I would have been playing it before now. And until you could actually race it online, I've never really touched it. So one of the biggest reasons why I've loved iRacing so much over the last 6 years is because of the online racing. I'm an online racing kind of guy. I'm not really one for just jumping in a car and hot lapping. I like to try historic circuits. I like to try historic cars. I find that quite fun. But I like racing. I like the community. I like giving people a virtual high five at the end of the race. That's what I enjoy. And really, iRacing was the only place where I could get that. But ever since Low Fuel Motorsports announced that they were going to be offering daily races on rFactor2 as well as ACC, well, that gave me another option. And it's proven to be a pretty good one. Now, I tried rFactor2 probably around 18 months ago and gave you my thoughts on it. And to summarise, I loved the driving experience, but I hated the front end. I hated the UI. I hated the fact that I couldn't get a race online. So I didn't touch it after that. I left it in my Steam library and never clicked it again. But now I literally can't stop playing it. So I'm going to talk about why rFactor2 is keeping me off iRacing and any other simulators out there, Automobilista 2, ACC, Race Room. I'm going to explain why rFactor2 is doing it for me right now. So, firstly, I'm going to talk about iRacing. And as I mentioned just a short time ago, I'm an iRacing guy through and through. I absolutely love it. However, I'm a little bit bored. It's just GT3 racing all the time. They're the popular series. Yes, you can jump into an open wheeler, but I find them boring. I find every series on iRacing right now boring. There's nothing new. There's nothing innovative. It's just boring. It's the same old cars, tracks. And I know that's the same on any simulator, but there's nothing else apart from the racing. There's just nothing. I'm longing for rain and changeable weather on iRacing. That might spark my attention once again, but at the moment, I just find the simulator boring, and I shouldn't. I'm an online racer. I love racing online, but there's just nothing that's grabbing me. I don't know what it is. I'm just not grasped by iRacing the way I was. I've no real complaints about the way it drives, although the cars are a little bit boring. You know, you accelerate, brake, turn. There's nothing in between, if that makes sense. There's no excitement in the driving experience. And I feel completely different when I jump into rFactor2. Now, before you've seen quite a bit of rFactor2 on the channel, I didn't really have much content. So I'm going to talk about how much it's cost me really to get up and running and racing on Low Fuel Motorsports. So I had the base game that was sat in my Steam library for God knows how long. And then one of the things I don't like about rFactor2 or on LFM, it's not LFM's fault, it's just the way it happens with rFactor2. If I wanted to race the touring cars on Low Fuel Motorsports, say I wanted to drive the new BMW 330, you can't just buy the BMW 330. You've got to own every single car. So there's 5 touring cars now. So you would have to buy all 5, even if you just wanted to race one. That's what iRacing does good. You only need to buy the car that you want to drive. But on rFactor2, you've got to have all the content to enter the race, which is a little bit shoddy. So, initially, I spent £102 on content for rFactor2. And I bought a few packs for that. And that pretty much set me up. I didn't have to buy anything else. That was the endurance pack and the touring car pack and all the rest of it. About £102. And then just the other day, I bought the Q4 content, which was the new BMW, Thruxton, Croft, Bahrain, and the new hypercar that I've not really had a proper look at yet. So probably including the base game and the content, which I've got now, I spent about £150. But I don't have any subscription. That's it. I pay that and I can race on Low Fuel Motorsports right now for free. Cost me nothing. Where on iRacing, I probably spent a couple of £1,000 on content and I've still got to pay that subscription every month, which wasn't a problem because I enjoyed it. But my subscription is up for renewal in December and I'm actually contemplating not renewing. So I'll talk about some of the things first of all, which I find better in rFactor2. Now, I've never had a problem with the force feedback on iRacing. It's always been fine. And that might just be because I'm used to it. You know, that's what I'm used to. But the force feedback in rFactor2 is so much better. It's really, really detailed. You can feel the flat spots on the tyres, which you don't get on iRacing, by the way. You can feel all the flat spots. You can feel all the lumps, bumps on the track, car contact, curbs. The force feedback at rFactor2 is really good. So that's better than iRacing, even though I never had a problem with iRacing's force feedback. The car handling is way better on rFactor2, even though I didn't really have a problem with iRacing's car handling physics. rFactor2 just does it so much better. The cars move around, you can catch a slide, you can accelerate coming out of a corner and oversteer and just keep the power on. It's just so much more controllable. The car contact is a little bit more realistic. You don't go flying off in a completely different direction with just the smallest contact. Everything just feels a little bit more controllable. Everything feels a little bit more natural. And because of that, well, you're going to race longer. You're going to stay in races for longer. And I just feel the car handling is so much more enjoyable in rFactor2 than it is in iRacing, even though I never had a problem with iRacing's handling prior to really getting stuck into rFactor2. Now I'm going to talk about the changeable weather conditions, not knowing what you're going to face when you jump into a race server. On iRacing, you don't even think about it. You just click join and you're in a dry race with whatever time is set in the server. On rFactor2, on Low Fuel Motorsport, you jump in. Is it going to be dry? Is it going to be wet? Is it going to be in between? Then there's that mental challenge of figuring out quickly what to do with your setup. And the races are completely different. No races on rFactor2 have been the same that I've entered. They've all been slightly different. And on iRacing, it's pretty much the same old story every single time you do a race. It's just a little bit stale. The day-night transitions in rFactor2 are better than iRacing, even though I didn't have an issue with iRacing's transitions from day to night. rFactor2 just does it a little bit more gradual. It's just a bit smoother. There's no real light changes instantly like there is on iRacing sometimes. Just the whole driving experience when you're in the car seems a little bit more polished. Now, I'm not going to lie, rFactor2 is a bit of a pain in the backside to set up. Well, it's if you put an hour aside to sit down on rFactor2 and configure everything properly, that's it, an hour. That's all it takes, is an hour. But it is a little bit daunting when you jump into the simulator and you look at the menus and you look at how many buttons you can configure. You think, what's going on here? That's ridiculous. And the way you set up the mirrors and all that kind of stuff, iRacing does that way better. The whole configuring the simulator in iRacing is 100 times better than it is on rFactor2. But do it right on rFactor2, and you've only got to do it once. The UI on rFactor2 when you're in the simulator is dated. It's rubbish. It gives you all the information that you need, I guess, during the race. But again, it's not as good as iRacing's UI, the way the black box system works on iRacing and how easy it is to change things during the race. On rFactor2, it's a little bit dated. That definitely needs to be brought up to 2022 standards. It's way behind. And sometimes rFactor2 does have stability issues when you're entering a server. The game might crash. But I've found that if I just restart the game and jump back in, I've been able to join without any issues. And the content manager side of things on rFactor2, because you can download mods, it's a little bit confusing sometimes as with regards to what you've got installed and what you haven't. And if you do have a problem, then troubleshooting and finding out what's causing it might be an issue. And that might just be a case of unsubscribing to all the mods and then loading them in until you find what's causing the problem. Now, I've been asked this question during the streams this week many times. Should I get into rFactor2? Like, should I cancel my iRacing subscription and should I get into rFactor2? It's a difficult one because rFactor2, or with Low Fuel Motorsports and rFactor2, doesn't have the matchmaking system that iRacing has. They've got that down. That's perfect the way that they do it. It's incredible. And it's so populated, and you can get a race pretty much any time of the day, 24/7. But if you're in Europe, especially, then Low Fuel Motorsports and rFactor2 is a legitimate option to iRacing, depending on what you want to drive. There's not many GT3 races on rFactor2. Hallelujah. GT3s, boring. We're sick to death of GT3s. We are, come on. It's everywhere. It's nice to race something different. Sorry, I digress. Should you get into rFactor2 and Low Fuel Motorsports? Well, I think you should get into rFactor2, give it a whirl, try some of the base content, see if you like it. You can get it on Steam, and if you don't like it, you can get a refund if you've only played it for up to 60 minutes. However, bear in mind it takes a little while to get things set up, so that 60 minutes could easily disappear before you even get on track. But from me, an iRacing guy, rFactor2 is giving me things right now that iRacing isn't, or that any simulator isn't giving me. ACC, I've tried it. It feels weird. I'm not going to lie. It just feels weird. Low Fuel Motorsports have done wonders with ACC. And if you do like ACC, great. You can get on there and you can race all day, every day. And it won't cost you a penny apart from buying ACC and the DLC. But I just think it feels weird. Race Room, I love Race Room, but the online side of things, again, is a bit rubbish. And I'm an online guy. I like racing online. So Race Room is not doing it for me online. Automobilista 2 looks beautiful, sounds good. But again, you can't get an online race done properly. So for me, 150 quid it's cost me, approximately, to set up rFactor2 with all the DLC needed to race online every day if I wanted to. Is it worth it? 100%. 100%. It's keeping me off iRacing. And if something's keeping me off iRacing, a simulator which I absolutely love, then it must be doing something much better. Because I only play things that I enjoy playing. I'm not going to play things which I don't enjoy. This is a hobby. I do this for fun. So it's got to be enjoyable for me to sit here for the amount of time that I do. So rFactor2 is killing it right now. Low Fuel Motorsports have been a huge part in that. Let's not forget, if it wasn't for Low Fuel Motorsports doing what they're doing, rFactor2's player numbers would be way down. And I'm just so grateful for what they've done. And I'm so thankful for being in a position where I can actually pick and choose what I want to play. So there's my thoughts. iRacing's not done. I've not finished with iRacing. We're just on a break until it stops being boring, if that makes sense. It's just doing nothing to spark my attention. rFactor2, every race is different. Different people, different cars, different race dynamics. It's doing everything for me. It's ticking all my boxes. So if I were you, jump onto rFactor2, give it a whirl. If you like it, get the DLC. But let me know in the comments what you think of the rFactor2 resurgence. It's always been there. It's always been popular with a small group of people. I didn't realise how good it would be racing online. It's incredible. But let me know in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching. Have a great week. See you later. Cheers.